Welcome to Special Topic 4, and we are going to be talking about philosophic perspective. We are on slide 65. Slide 66, again, you'll see the questions that will be posed for your signature assignment or philosophy paper, and the question we'll be dealing with is in yellow. What is your education philosophic perspective? Before moving on the next several slides, which deal with philosophy of education, read Philosophy of Education, the reading. It can be found in your resource section. It also can be found in your Satker supplement text. This reading will provide background information relative to the two philosophies. As we move to slide 68, Philosophy of Education Introduction, we define philosophy as the most basic beliefs, concepts, and attitudes of an individual or group. And philosophy always answers the question, why? The philosophies we will discuss will answer the questions below. So make sure that you read each question, and we'll be addressing those through this PowerPoint, this portion of the PowerPoint. On slide 70, would like to return back to those two ideas of behaviorism and cognitivism or constructivism. And keep in mind the two views of learning. These views can also be found in the two major categories of philosophy. If we are teacher-centered in our approach, we are most likely to be behaviorist in nature. If we are student-centered, then we're most likely to be cognitivist or constructivist in our approach. So we want to bring those two ideas back to and focus them in the area of philosophy. Now, if you take a look at this chart, note that perennialism and essentialism are teacher-centered or behaviorist in nature, while progressivism, social reconstructionism, and existentialism are student-centered. And these are cognitivist or constructivist in nature. So this chart will be helpful to you in separating the teacher-centered from the student-centered philosophies. So the next several slides will be devoting to finding your philosophy of education. In your supplemental text, the Satker text, read the scenario on pages 179 to 181, then take the survey on pages 181 and 183. The survey will help you determine your philosophy, and use the chart on page 196 as a reference. We're going to take the philosophies one at a time, and we're going to talk about perennialism first. And as you read the slide or look at the slide, you'll see on the left-hand side the four areas that are important to consider when looking at each philosophy. You know, what is the focus of the curriculum? What are the goals or goal for the students relative to that philosophy? What's the role of the teacher? And what's the sample activity related to that philosophy, so that you can see this slide view summarizes perennialism, which is teacher-centered and based on the idea that learning is based on great lasting ideas of the past. The Socratic seminar is a strategy that is used among perennialists. This clip describes how the Socratic seminar is utilized. This is an important strategy. Socratic seminar is an important strategy used by those who advocate or support the view of perennialism. So take a minute to watch that clip. And something to think about: in what ways does perennialism connect with these pictures? That's Stephen Covey on the left, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You'll see Moby Dick, Socrates, and then you'll see the light bulb, which symbolizes the focus of ideas. Slide 77, we take a look at Essentialism, which again is a teacher-centered philosophy. And on the left-hand side, you can see the categories that we're looking at, and on the right-hand side, you can see how those components are defined or used. Now, the foundation of essentialism is the essentials of or basics that comprise an education. This slide describes how an essentialist would view curriculum, goals for students, role of the teacher in sample activity, accountability movements such as back to basic movements, and in part No Child Left Behind are based on beliefs essentialism and the importance of a core curriculum that is anchored in the basics. Again, there's some pictures there, and think about how those might relate to the idea of essentialism. Notice that the book on the far right by E.D. Hirsch, Cultural Literacy, E.D. Hirsch is a pioneer, or one who advocates the point of view of an essentialist in the work that schools ought to be doing. This clip, known as the last lecture, is a very interesting clip, and keep in mind that even though sometimes lectures get a bad reputation or a bad name, if they're designed well, they can be a powerful teaching tool. This clip is entitled, as I said, The Last Lecture. So lecture is a strategy that you would use if you were an essentialist, but again, I want to make sure that it's clear that if designed correctly and with the right components, a lecture can be a very meaningful experience, a very meaningful approach for teaching, and can have a very meaningful impact on students. You don't have to watch the whole lecture, but I just want you to see part of that. And the question that I pose are lectures good or bad pedagogy? Post your paragraph on Moodle Forum 2 as response 6. So tell me your ideas or thoughts about lectures, and whether or not you feel they are good, or if they are appropriate or inappropriate. These gentlemen played an important role in rounding and maintaining the spirit, and maintaining the spirit of essentialist philosophy throughout the 20th and 21st centuries. Mortimer Adler, and E.D. Hirsch. A sample essentialist list of what students need to know, be able to do, is depicted on this slide. So someone like E.D. Hirsch would advocate that students need to know certain concepts, certain vocabulary, and so he produced lists of things, of content that should be should be taught and understood and tested in schools. And if you want to read or listen to E.D. Hirsch as he discusses key ideas related to essentialism, his thoughts on core knowledge may be of interest to you, and you can just click on that link. Now again, let's take a look at the 5 educational philosophies. We've just spoken about perennialism and essentialism, and I've given you the components of each philosophy. And now we're going to move to the right-hand side of the chart, Progressivism, Social Reconstructionism, and Existentialism, which will be student-centered. This slide defines Progressivism. Pay particular attention to the part that's highlighted in yellow. That's slide 85. Slide 86, this slide illustrates how a progressivist might view the focus on curriculum, the goal for students, the role of the teacher, and a sample activity. These are other ideas that are related to progressivism that might be of interest to you. These are key ideas that are important. The person who founded or was a pioneer of progressivism is John Dewey. This slide shares some of Dewey's views related to progressivism and the use of curriculum. in a school that embraces progressivism. Now, a cousin of progressivism is social reconstructionism. It's very similar to progressivism, but there's a social component that's added. Noted that in social reconstruction, there's usually a project or activity that is geared towards helping improve society. So you have progressivism, and then you have some type of activity or learning experience that is related to improving society. Existentialism, which is the last philosophy that we'll discuss here, is to the far right of the progressivist continuum. Note that in existentialist philosophy, students determine what they want to learn. They determine the goals, the curriculum, the pace, and the direction of their learning. And a lady by the name of Maxine Greene would be someone that you would want to remember as a pioneer in the area of existentialist philosophy for teaching. Next two slides have to do with pictures. This was art work created by YHC students in an art class. Actually, this particular picture was someone that was in my education class last year. They determine the subject and they determine the medium, and at some point in time, subjects such as art and music can become existentialism. Can become an existentialist endeavor. Often, you'll find art and music as a philosophy in which it's the final outcome is basically a student-centered approach to learning. Now again, review the 5 educational philosophies. You can see them on that chart. Now here's a question: can you blend the philosophies? Do you have to stick with one philosophy as a teacher, or can you blend them? Often good teaching is a blend of those philosophies, and we call that, if you go to slide 96, we term blending the philosophies as eclecticism, or being an eclectic. Sorry, I have trouble pronouncing that. And that's someone who blends philosophies and uses parts of each in their teaching. And a question for you to post and respond to is: what benefits are there for someone to be an eclectic? Post your response on Moodle Forum 1 as response 7. So again, eclectic is someone who can use bits and pieces of all the philosophies, and most teachers who are good practitioners will use elements of each philosophy depending on the approach that they're using or the subject matter that they're teaching. And just a couple slides of interest. Again, as you are thinking about your philosophy, this slide has to do with the average retention rate after 24 hours. If you lecture, there's a 5% retention rate, all the way up to, if you engage if you have students teach others the concept, for example, perhaps in a cooperative learning setting, then you have 90% retention rate. So I think those are interesting facts and have some implications on what approaches best work for teaching students. And what keeps our attention? Certainly choice, relevance, feedback, getting feedback from the teacher, and engaging either emotionally, physically, or verbally in the content. Those are all important considerations when we're looking at teaching approaches. And again, philosophies are closely related to approaches that we use. Slide 29. Students learn as much for a teacher as they do from a teacher. And I'm curious to see what you think that quote means. That was from Linda Darling Hammond. So post on Moodle Forum 2 as response 6 what you think. Students learn as much for a teacher as they do from a teacher. What that quote means to you.